You did it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course.
Thanks. Okay.
It's what I'm here for.
I'm preparing the YouTube and getting things started, so we're not quite ready yet.
And so that's what. And at the same time, they're running the old station that tells them about. That's what there is about ocean in the air. That's the big thing that I mean, start them all out.
Okay, the time is 6 o'clock and we're ready to begin.
Okay, I will call the Moraga-Orinda Fire District regular board meeting for 2019-2024 to order.
Director Danziger,
Here.
Director Hasler,
Here.
Director Jex,
Here.
Director Jorgens, President Romer, and he is absent. And for the record, Director Hasler is participating from Florida via Zoom. Would we like to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're now going to invite comments for things from the public for things that are on the closed session agenda.
And we do not have any attendees and we've not received any written public comments.
Okay. Seeing this meeting to the closed session, and we will resume the meeting at 7 o'clock for the regular board.
Thank you. I'm working on moving. My mouse is having a little bit of struggle right now. Okay, the time is 6:02.
All right, so
And I need to, we need.
I'm moving.
My computer is on. Go ahead.
I can hear you, Marcia.
You're good? Okay.
Where are we supposed to be?
They're looking at the ambulance right now.
I have to take my winter jacket.
The workers' comp thing is like
Should have brought some cookies or something. Like joint results.
I stay buddies. They're gonna be the first to get into the station.
start the recording.
They run through, so they go back, I just.
I'm sure this is.
That's been long back.
Yeah.
And then-
Yeah.
Oh, could they hear me talking?
Oh, good.
Director Danziger,
Here.
Director Hassler,
Here.
Director Jex,
Here.
Director Jorgens. President Romer is absent. And Director Hassler is participating from Florida via Zoom.
So there is nothing to report from the closed session.
And-
On the regular minute.
And the next item, at the request will be taken out of order for workers' compensation insurance coverage.
Good evening, Director. The district is required to provide workers' compensation benefits to employees. So the district has three options. The first is to purchase a policy from a licensed insurer. The second is to become a stand-alone self-insurer and assume all risk associated with injured employees up to statutory limits. The third option is how the district is covered, which is to self-insure by becoming a member of a pooling arrangement under a joint exercise of powers agreement. The district is self-insured and is a member of the Fire Risk Management Services Joint Powers Authority. Tonight, we have in attendance Jim Elledge, Executive Director of the Fire Risk Management Services. And so Jim has a presentation for the board.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. Thank you for making time on your agenda tonight for me to make a short report on the JPA that the district has participated in since I believe back to 1997 for workers' compensation coverage. So it's been a long time, good partner of firms. I am, as Dorian mentioned, the executive director of the Fire Risk Management Services Joint Powers Authority, which we refer to as firms. You may have seen in the past documents that refer to FASIS. FASIS is the predecessor agency to firms. So on July 1st, 2023, FASIS and another JPA, the FPAC EBA, which provided employee benefits coverage to fire districts and other public agencies, consolidated to become firms. And so that was done really because there was crossover in the membership, but they were administering two organizations. So we achieved some cost efficiencies by becoming one organization, adding on that additional line of coverage to firms, and then offering both coverages to fire districts throughout the state. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on the overview of firms, let's talk a little bit about the structure and the coverage, and then we'll get into a little more detail on how the district's contribution is determined on an annual basis, how the claims experience, how the district's losses impact that contribution. Then we'll spend a little bit of time just comparing for information's sake the district to other similar sized agencies, and then talking a little bit about the makeup of the claims that firms has covered for the district. And of course, stop me along the way if you have any questions.
And I just want to make sure that I'm on the same
Yes.
slide. Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
thank you. Thank you for running the slides.
You're welcome.
So firms, which technically FASIS was formed in 1984 as a joint powers authority, originally workers' compensation. As I just mentioned, we now offer employee benefits coverage to a number of districts and other public agencies. But the real guts of firms is providing services to fire districts. So there's no municipal fire departments, it's fire districts up and down the state of California. So we do have a specialty in providing services and workers' comp coverage to fire districts around the state. And at the end of the day, the members own the pool. So I'll refer to firms as pool, sometimes JPA, some kind of pool, I like to use pool. But the members are the owners of firms. So the members direct what we do. Now, workers' compensation is driven by the laws and regulations and the labor code in the state of California. But the districts throughout the state that are members of firm have other needs, wellness needs, risk control needs. And so the pool tries to help solve issues that districts face from time to time and develop programs to offer to the members above and beyond the workers' compensation coverage. And so there is a strong emphasis on safety and wellness. We offer subsidization for annual physical examinations, pre-employment examinations, and a newly created contract or agreement with a resiliency, first responders resiliency training that helps to train first responders to basically their goal is to prevent PTSD. So we give them the tools to deal with what firefighters and first responders and even dispatchers see on a day-to-day basis. Next slide. So there's 174 members in the workers' compensation program, and that's been pretty stable. Really the only fluctuation we've seen recently is due to consolidation of districts around the state, which has become more commonplace. And the workers' comp program is covering $200 million in covered payroll for all of those participating districts. The board of directors, the board is made up of members of firms, and so we've got fire chiefs, we've got Lorianne, of course, who has served on the board for a number of years and has been a valuable contributor on the board, and we have certainly appreciated all of her time serving on the board. And we also have directors like yourselves that sit on boards of fire districts around the state that are eligible to serve on the firm's board, and so we have 3 of those. And we have a representation of districts up and down the state from Southern California, Northern California. So good representation around the state.
Was that right? We have 174 districts and 200 million total covered compensation. That's only a little over $1 million per district.
Firms has a lot of really small districts. So there are a number of volunteer districts that are very, very small, some that only have 1 paid employee. So when you look at the distribution of the membership, there's, a smaller number of very large districts in the state, and then the bulk of the numbers of members are very, very small districts in the rural areas around the state.
Our district
is in the top 5 size for this. There's a significant number of JPA. Quickly on the organizational structure, we have a benefits committee, which obviously handles benefits matters. We have a newly created wellness committee that's going to be looking at our wellness offerings, evaluating the effectiveness and looking for any other opportunities to provide wellness services to the membership. And then exclusive of Lorianne, who's been the treasurer, our board council, the rest of the folks on this org chart work for Sedgwick. So Sedgwick is a very large company that's known for providing claims administration around the world. If not one of the biggest, if not the biggest claims administration firm in the world. They have a little tiny slice of their pie and their organization for pool administration, which is what myself and the individuals on this slide, as well as 100 or so more other individuals provide to, in California, 13 other pools just like firms. So I started out with the company. It was a boutique firm called Bickmore 25 years ago. Bickmore did this pool administration for a number of pools. We were acquired twice. So we were acquired by a company called York, and then York acquired Sedgwick, but we keep doing what we do in our own little, try to keep our own little boutique shop of providing this pool administration to pools just like firms. And then this slide shows there's a whole host of other providers that help make firms work and operate on a day-to-day basis. And I've highlighted one that I'll just spend a minute talking about because it's certainly relevant to the workers' compensation program, and that is the firm Athens Administrators. So Athens has been engaged by firms to handle all of the workers' compensation claims, the day-to-day adjudication of claims, and working with members and working with the injured workers to handle those claims. They've been a partner of firms for over 20 years. There have been, you can go to the next slide, thanks. Despite their longevity, the board has called for RFPs throughout the years, and Athens has showed very well during all those RFPs and have been able to retain the business. And primarily, one of the standout reasons why they're such a good partner is that they have a dedicated team of claims examiners that just handle firms' claims. So even the district has a dedicated claims examiner that works directly with the districts on the claims on the injured workers of the district. So you have a direct contact to Athens and an individual that knows those claims inside and out. And it's very much a partnership between the district and the claims adjuster and firms to try to get the right treatment, make sure that it's the appropriate treatment, get the injured worker back to work if possible, and resolve the claim as quickly as possible. Because the longer a workers' compensation claim stays, the more expensive it is. So there's an emphasis on settling claims wherever possible. Athens also provides a whole suite of other services to contain the costs. The nurse triage, where an injured worker can call a phone number once they're injured, talk to the nurse, talk about the best way to get treatment, and then that starts the paperwork going and keeps the district in compliance with the required reporting required by the Department of Industrial Relations. We have return to work services, utilization review to make sure that the medical treatment that the injured worker is getting is the appropriate medical treatment that's going to help them improve, go back to work, and resolve that claim. This just shows a picture of the coverage. So firms takes on per claim or per occurrence the first $750,000 of a claim. Then they do that in 2 layers. So there's a primary layer from the first dollar to 500,000, and then there's another layer we call the mid layer that would take the claim from 500,000 to 750. That layer has been pre-funded. So we're not charging at this point, we're not charging the districts for that layer of coverage. We're only charging for the primary layer to 500,000. And then firms purchases additional coverage from another JPA, and the acronym is LOPS, but it's a public entity, joint powers authority, just like firms, organized the same way firms is organized. And this LOPS JPA covers a claim from 750,000 to 5 million. LOPS then purchases additional excess insurance coverage from yet another JPA. And this JPA is called PRISM. It's probably the biggest JPA in the state, providing all kinds of lines of coverage to public entities, counties. They have a very, very large membership. And PRISM will take a claim from $5 million per occurrence up to statutory limits. So whatever the law calls for when to treat an injured worker and to pay those benefits, PRISM will pay whatever it takes to stay within the limits of the law.
What's the difference in premiums per dollar for those 4 different layers? Because it ought to be a lot cheaper for the top part, for example.
It is a lot cheaper for the top.
A fifth or a tenth, a lot cheaper.
Yeah, so LOPS's total budget is 30 million for the 750,000 to 5 million. I mean, from soup to nuts. So LOPS's total budget, including the PRISM piece, is say $30 million, and PRISM is, I think, charging them $6 or $8 million for that upper layer of coverage. So it is more, as you drop down, obviously it gets more expensive because there's more frequency of claims in the lower layers.
And why do we have to reinsure it with somebody like that instead of just any reinsurance company in the world?
You certainly could go to the commercial market to try to find this coverage. These JPAs were formed, back in the 80s because the commercial markets were refusing to write the business for public entities. And so these JPAs really came out of a crisis where, particularly in California, but it happened across the country, the commercial insurance just wanted out of the public entity business. And just overnight, they said, we're not writing business for public entities anymore. So the government code was amended, or law was passed to allow for these joint powers authorities to be created so that cities or special districts or fire districts can come together and create their own insurance pool and pool the monies, hire a TPA to pay the claims and distance themselves from the commercial insurance market. So that's kind of how they were born. They've now become much more sophisticated, like in the case of Prism, providing coverage on their own up to statutory limits, but Prism does purchase reinsurance and excess insurance from the commercial market for the upper layers. Okay, there's a lot of information on this slide, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the contribution methodology and really determining each member's contribution. It's more of a cost allocation model. There isn't really any subjectivity in it. So what we do is we identify the anticipated costs of the three major buckets. The first is how much money do we need to collect from the membership to pay for the estimated ultimate cost of the claims for next year. And so the board has hired an independent actuary who's been working with firms for a number of years to help us forecast what that cost will be for next year. So the actuary looks at all of our historical claims data. It looks at all of our payroll and our exposure, and then makes a forecast based on our history and based on the makeup of the group for next year, what the expected cost will be to cover the claims from $0 to $500,000. We set that at a fairly conservative level because we don't want to go back and say we didn't collect enough. We want to collect a comfortable amount within firms to pay for those claims. And we'd rather have money left over, because the money left over belongs to the members. Then there's the potential for dividends down the road, but we really want to avoid having to go back and say we didn't collect enough in a particular year. So we collect this contribution piece at an 80% confidence level, which is pretty typical among pools. So basically 8 out of 10 years, if we keep doing this, we're gonna, 8 out of 10 years, we have collected the right amount of money. And these are also discounted. This amount of money is discounted for anticipated future investment income. So we're discounted to net present value. We collect this money. Firms collects the money up front for next year's claims, but we don't pay it all out at once. We're holding on to those funds for a number of years, and workers' compensation claims can take 8, 9, 10, 20 years to pay out. So while we're holding on to those contributions, they're invested in accordance with the government code. We have an independent investment advisor that helps us invest those funds while we're holding on to it. So we can take a little bit of a credit on the rates for the funding in anticipation of the investment income that we will earn on that money while we're holding it.
And that affects the rates for the coming years.
Yes, that discount will lower the rate. So if we were not discounting at all, it would be a higher contribution rate. This year, we increased the discount rate a little bit. We try to stay conservative and not be too aggressive and chase what's going on currently in the fixed income markets. But we did give a little bit of 25 basis points or so to give a little bit more credit to the members and try to keep the contributions as stable as possible and avoid the big ups and downs for the initiative.
Like a pandemic.
Yeah.
Would that have affected?
The pandemic, I have some information on the COVID claims. It wasn't as much as we thought it was going to be.
That was not workers' comp, that was mental. It wasn't.
No, it could be workers' comp.
Those did turn into workers' compensation claims. They weren't for firms, and particularly for the district, it wasn't a lot of money.
It's presumptive, right? It was presumptive.
For a time, it was presumptive. Yep. Okay, the second, if you go back to the other slide.
yes.
Right? All right, so the second component of the contribution and the rate is the excess insurance, which you talked about. So LOX is going to charge firms a contribution for the coverage that they are providing, and that includes the coverage provided by Prism. And then the administrative expenses is the third component, which is obvious. We need to collect money to run the JPA, and so that includes things like our fee for Sedgwick, and we are paid a fixed fee. The only time our fee changes is when the contract is renewed, and it's usually a 5-year contract, or when there's changes in membership. So we take on new members, the fee is adjusted pro rata based on the payroll that came in as a result of that new member. And then there's other expenses, board meetings, you know, the typical financial audits, actuarial studies, things of that nature. So we provide all of these amounts. Well, the actuary comes up with the first amount. And he tells us what that's going to be. We provide the actuary with the excess insurance that we're going to be paying to locks. We provide them with our administrative expense budget. And then the actuary puts all those together and develops a rate based on the payroll that is expected for next year. And so that rate times $100 of that payroll is what becomes sort of the pure contribution. So, but we don't charge at that point. There is an adjustment for loss experience of each member. So now I think we can go to the next slide. So the first step is the rate the actuary gives us times each member district's payroll. Then we adjust that contribution by the experience modification factor, which we call an X mod. And what this is doing, it's looking at, well, we're calculating a loss rate. So we're taking the last 3 years of each district's claims incurred. And incurred losses is what's been paid on the claims and what the adjusters have set as a reserve on the claims. We're comparing that, we're calculating a rate based on the payroll for each member. So incurred losses divided by payroll gives us a loss rate. And so you can see these are the numbers for 24-25. Doing that calculation, the district's loss rate is $3.31 in incurred losses per $100 of payroll. Then we compare that to the pool as a whole. So we would expect the average loss rate to be. So for the pool as a whole, the loss rate is $3.27 per $100 of payroll. So they're very close. The district's loss rate and the pool as a whole loss rate is very close. So we're going to expect the experience modifier to be close to 1.0, because essentially if the district's loss rate is much lower than the average, then it's going to be something well south of 1.0. If the loss rate is higher, much higher than the for firms, then it's going to be north of 1.0. So the district's experience modifier is 0.999, which is about what we would expect given that loss rate. And this fluctuates over time because it's dependent on the claims activity. So payroll is generally pretty stable. But the claims are where you see some volatility because claims happen, and this is a dangerous business. So the experience modifier will fluctuate from time to time, depending on the claims in that 3-year window that we're looking at. That piece making sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so that we get that pure contribution, and then we apply this experience modifier, and then that becomes what is billed to the district. So the first piece is very much a cost allocation, and this experience modifier does bring in some incentive to keep losses down, because you will get a credit on the contribution for lower than average losses. So there is some credit for lower losses. Now, just want to be interesting for your information to see the top 5 members of firms by payroll. So these are similarly sized agencies within firms. And the experience modifier, we'll see a little bit of the history of that on the next slide. But there you're at 0.99, and these are the same districts, and they're in each district's experience modifier over the past 5 or 6 years. So the district is that thicker orange line, and all the other districts are the other lines, obviously. So you can see everybody's goes up and down from time to time, depending on the loss experience. And so there was a bit of a spike in 2020, 2021 for the district, and then it's been on the decline. The modifier, the losses have been better than expected for those subsequent 3 years, and then it's ticked back up for 24, 25. The 23, 24 years looking like a little bit of a higher than average loss year so far for the district, but that's a very, very green year. It still has some time to develop, and then when it settles out, there's the possibility that it could come down. But not too far out of line from these other larger districts. And the larger districts, their behavior is much more predictable just because of the large numbers. So I thought this was nice to see the district right sort of in the middle of all these other larger districts. This slide, we put in quite a few years here just to give a nice history and picture of, this is all specific to the district, of the historical contributions paid to firms since 2010-11. And you can see at the bottom there, the total contributions is $12.1 million have been paid in. The losses paid by firms on district claims, 9.7. We have just over 1.9 million in outstanding case reserves. So again, these are the reserves that have been established by the case adjusters based on the information that they know about the claims. And you probably noticed that one way up at the top, that $46,000 from 2010-11, there is one open claim in that year. It's an injury related to an individual's heart, and that individual is continuing to seek treatment from time to time. So the most recent treatment was back in November of 23. So that is considered an active open claim, and so we have a reserve there for the future costs of that individual seeking treatment from time to time.
So there's $400,000 difference between the two warrant costs there. Where does that go?
So there are really, the way the pool works, there isn't, like a banking arrangement where this is what you put in, this is what we've paid out, and then the difference goes back to or is collected from the members. Every member shares in all of the losses within the pool. And so we do this exercise. If we did this exercise for every single member, added it all up, it would likely be close to the retained earnings or the surplus of the pool. So if there is a margin of contributions in excess of what we've paid out in claims, and granted, we still have to pay the excess insurance and the administrative expenses. So some of that contribution is also going to pay for those items. If there is extra, that goes to the pool's surplus or net position.
But you said that the number that we pay in is based on the administrative costs and the excess insurance costs, and all of those costs are all supposed to be in there. So how much is the retained earnings?
The retained earnings right now is at 15 million for the pool as a whole.
So not after you subtract out the outstanding things.
Yes. So that you're right, the contribution, that $12.1 million includes everything. It's anticipated to cover the claims, the district share of the administrative expenses, the district share of the excess insurance costs. What we're deducting here, the 11.7, is just the claims piece. So there could be two other columns showing a deduction for the excess insurance and a deduction for the administrative expenses, which would probably come out to about the $12 million that was paid in.
So we have $15 million in retained earnings.
The pool as a whole has $15 million in retained earnings. Yeah.
Question, I assume you're familiar with the numbers that were put in the budget for this year?
Are you asking Jim or are you asking me?
Both of you.
So I'm familiar with the budget. Jim is not familiar with our budget, no.
Oh, okay. You mentioned the trend was up. The number that we put in for the budget shows 20% increase in the contribution. A significant reduction in the workers' comp recovery from 450 to 200,000 coming out of a return, which is a 61% increase in the total budget impact for this year.
Right, so I budgeted the workers' compensation line based on that firms has already set the rates, so the rate has been set for the district. So that's exactly what we're gonna have to pay the firms. And so then the other piece, and then the workers' comp, the recovery piece, then I conservatively put that at 200,000. The 400,000 that we got this year was high, that was a peak. So I reduced it to 200,000. So to hopefully we'll probably reach that.
So you said the entity is owned by the members, right? So do we have that, our fifth or our eighth of that $15 million on our books someplace?
No, we do not. We don't have control over it.
No, so technically with the JPA agreement and the bylaws. Call for the board, so the board makes the decision as to whether to return excess monies to the membership. And so until the board declares a dividend, technically you really can't count that as an asset on the district's books. Because it would be more of a contingent gain. And I know the accounting folks don't like contingent gains on the books. So the board really does have control over if and when to release some of that surplus or net position back to the membership in the form of a dividend.
How many people are on your board?
11.
What pool do they come out of, and who do they represent?
We go through an election process every year, so we do have staggered terms for those 11 members, and I think it's a 4-4-3 cycle. And so every year we have an election to fill the 4 or 3 vacant positions. And so that comes out from the membership in the form of nominations, and then there is an election through a ballot process. And that's just going on right now. So we'll be announcing the newly elected board members at the firm board meeting next week.
And who gets to vote?
Every voting member. So, and a voting member in firms is any fire district that's a member. So we have some other municipalities that are non-voting members because the board wanted only fire district members to be the voting members. So the 174 members of the workers' compensation program, they're all voting members.
So why do they all get equal votes instead of being voted by your contributions or something? Because clearly it sounds like the United Nations, you know, that you get, there are 174, we're an eighth of it, so we ought to get an eighth of the votes. So those 5 people that you listed ought to elect everybody, or almost everybody.
The way the governing documents are written, the JPA agreement and the bylaws is really what we have to follow. As far as the election process, and it calls for all voting members to cast a vote during the election process.
And including the ones that have 1 employee. You're paid $1,000 a year. Okay.
Right, and then finally, I just wanted to show a picture of and I know it's hard to see, I apologize, the nature of the covered claims that firms has handled on behalf of the district. And so the biggest, and this is measured by incurred loss, so it's been paid, and the case reserves that have been established. And so on the right there, the biggest slice of the pie is the sprains, strains, and pain. at 43% of the total incurred losses for the district. That's almost identical to firms as a whole. So that's tracks with the collective membership. The next biggest slice of the pie is the upper left brown, which is cardiovascular at 17%. Firms as a whole is at 13% of the incurred losses in that loss category. Below that, the green is cancer claims. The district and firms both at 12% of the incurred losses. And then at the bottom there, the orange is fracture and crushing at 13% of the incurred losses. So the losses, at least the distribution tracks pretty consistently with firms as a whole. Nothing really jumped out at me, but we do use this kind of information and we'll be using it more in the future to design our risk control and loss control plans, looking at what are the major drivers of the loss costs and is there anything we can do to help mitigate, prevent losses in these areas. Obviously some we can't, but you know, slips and trips and falls, respiratory, you know, we go out and we have risk control consultants that make sure that there's an effective injury and illness prevention plan in place. That there's respiratory training, so we do visit the members, try to visit all the members every 3 or 4 years and go through a checklist to see that they have all of these effective safety practices in place.
What percentage of the fire districts in the state do you represent?
I don't know the answer to that question.
How about the percentage of the fire district dollars?
I haven't looked at the population of the total population of fire districts in the state. So I can't answer that, but I certainly can find out. Available, yeah. And back to the board, I mean, I think there are certainly other ways to elect a board, but I think we've had a really very effective board historically. I think it's a great board right now, and it includes both. So with the consolidation, there was a conscious effort to make sure that there were directors from the benefits pool and from the workers' compensation pool, so that there was, you know, that collective knowledge was transferring over to the new board. But I think the folks that we have, the fire chiefs and the directors, have been on for some time. Some are pretty consistently reelected, but they tend to come from the bigger districts. So the bigger districts are represented: Sonoma Valley, Sonoma County, Novato, Moraga-Orinda. So we do have a good representation of bigger districts on the board. That concluded my prepared remarks, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Do we, yes, there's, I'm sure, do we contract for like legal representation for workers' comp cases on our own? Or is it through firms?
No, it's through firms provides the attorney.
We have a panel of defense attorneys that are familiar with the types of cases that we deal with, and the board is responsible for making changes, additions, and deletions to that panel.
So like the one case, the case that's been there for a while, where you had some funds put aside for future medical, do we make attempts to settle cases and things like that?
We do. We try actively try, and Athens, that's one of their focus points is to settle cases, ideally through a compromise and release, because that settles everything.
Yeah.
And they can't be reopened. Some of them through a stipulated award, which allows for takes care of the medical, but they try, but some people just don't want to take the lump sum. They want to be able to go to the doctor and have that paid for.
I managed workers' comp in the city of Oakland for 20 years.
Oh.
So. No.
You know more than I do.
Who's your biggest competitor?
Biggest competitor, there isn't a, I mean, there are competitors, there's not a lot of movement between the pools. There's another pool of special districts, the acronym is SDRMA. They have some fire, they have really any special district, could be a mosquito abatement district, a water district, a sewer district, a park and rec district, so they have, you know, a wide variety of membership. There's the Golden State Risk Management Authority. They're all formed under the same laws and operate similarly. Golden State also has a more diverse membership.
Where is Athens who manages our accounts located?
Firm's claims are managed out of their Concord office, which is where their headquarters are. So they're a California company. They have offices in other states, but they're primarily a California company.
More questions, anybody? Thank you so much. You was very well done.
Yeah, it's good.
Right, thank you. No, it's my pleasure. And I'm sure you'll let me know if there are any questions that come up after the fact. I'm happy to help out.
Get our claims down.
So do we,
Yes, and so we can go ahead and open public comment.
well, that was the presentation, but we also have something that the board is going to present. No, I mean, the staff's going to present about this, or was that it?
That was it.
So do we have any public comment on the presentation?
So public comment is open. We do not have any hands raised or any public comment.
Hey, where are we in the contract with firms?
Right, so we're a member of the JPA
Yeah,
and
we have a contract with them, or is it just ongoing?
it's ongoing, right? And then if the board wanted to leave firms, then there would be certain steps, then a process we would have to follow to exit out of firms.
Do we approve every 5 years to stay with them, or it just is a year to year, it just keeps going?
It just keeps going.
So I don't remember having to approve that in the past.
Right, we've never had the board, I think when we originally joined firms, it was approved by the board. And when the consolidation happened, the board had to approve the new JPA agreement, so it was done. But we've never made it so that the board had to, you know, look at alternatives or decide to stay in.
We should at least know what the alternatives are at some point when the sentence comes up.
So that's part of it. We're asking for direction. So if the board would like additional information or additional work done, then this would be the time to direct that.
I just have one other clarifying question. We just heard it from firms. What's FAIRS?
There's FARA,
What's FAIRS?
FARA, that covers our vehicle insurance, management liability, property, that piece of insurance.
Okay.
Okay,
So we now need to conduct the public hearing and adopt the annual operating budget for fiscal year 2025 as the time of the budget.
Good evening, directors. Tonight is the third public meeting to discuss the budget. In April 2024, the budget was discussed in detail for the first time. Last month, the budget was again discussed in detail for the second time. And last month, the board adopted the preliminary budget. Tonight is the third opportunity for public input and board direction. At the April board meeting, the board directed 6 changes that are detailed in the staff report. All board directed changes were incorporated into the budget. At the May board meeting, the board authorized 2 new positions, which have been included in the budget presented tonight. That's Deputy Fire Chief and Office Specialist Emergency Preparedness. The budget you see tonight is unchanged from what you reviewed and discussed in May. The budget reflects a budgeted deficit in the general fund of $315,964. Staff recommends the board conduct a public hearing and adopt the annual operating budget fiscal year 2025 as the final budget. Are there questions of staff at this time?
So we still have 0 in there for the salary increases, is that right?
Correct.
And I saw with the fire prevention budget, the dollar amount for cameras was still in there with an asterisk. So that would come back to us later. I mean, we can approve the budget but then it would come back to us before implementation.
Yes, sir. As discussed at the May meeting, understanding that that is potentially controversial, we committed to is that we would conduct a limited pilot utilizing iPhones and a chest rig of sorts. And then from that, we would gain information and additional context, identify what, if any, concerns would be raised, and we will come back to the board with a proposal, either yes or no. And that would be the board's opportunity to give direction to proceed. If we were to proceed, the budget is there. If we were not to proceed, then that budget item drops back into the general reserve, would be available for other uses.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, the question I asked earlier, curious as to why you're that conservative on that expectation of why the rebate dividend.
For the workers' compensation,
Is it because of incidences going up? I mean, that's a substantial impact on the budget. I mean, 60% increase in workers' comp. Oh,
right, so the rate was set by the firm's board, so that part isn't gonna change. The piece we don't know is then the recovery that we get, that's based on how many claims are filed by our employees. So that would be new claims, new injuries, we just don't know, it's unpredictable. And so the 400,000 this year was a spike, so that's why I brought it down conservatively to 200,000.
so it's just a guess.
Yes,
Okay, so it's not based on,
No, sir, we're not. It's not that we have a number of people that we know are injured and we're just waiting for the claim to land. No, so it was staff's best estimate of what we think it would be, but it's an unknowable number.
okay.
Any further questions?
The two additional positions that are in this budget, and so if we approve the budget tonight, we will approve those positions, but there's still work that needs to be done for those positions, right? Salaries, meet and confer, whatever else.
Yes, sir. Well, in two different regards. So we have an office specialist salary range. So the office specialist emergency preparedness would drop into the established range, and there would not be change. They're included in the unrepresented handbook with regard to benefits, working hours, so forth. So there's no additional work to be done in that regard. The deputy chief is a new position, and that would require, before that position was permanently filled, we would not only need to do a recruitment, and those are staff functions, but we would need to come back to the board with, among potentially other things, but primarily a salary schedule that the board would then approve that would include the new position. We don't currently have a position there, and so our salary schedule would have to be updated before we could permanently fill the positions in. And that obviously, which requires board action.
They're permanent. Any more questions from the board? Do we have any public comment?
So the hearing is open and we are now taking public comment. And we do not have any hands raised and we've not received any written public comment.
More questions by the board? More discussion. So do I hear a proposed action?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion. That we adopt the annual operating budget year 2025 as a final budget. And I would also add on to that we authorize the filling of those two positions.
Thanks.
Do I hear a second?
A second,
Okay.
Director Danziger,
Aye.
Director Hassler,
Aye.
Director Jex.
Aye.
And Director Jorgens.
Aye. Okay, motion's approved.
And thank you, staff, for all the work on the budget.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of work. There we go. Okay, next slide. Announcements from our staff.
We had if any, we have, sorry, excuse me. Have directors attended any meetings at district expense? They have not. Fire chief communications received or included in the packet, and then go to fire chief updates, finance report, Mary.
I can go 7.1, just, I did attend, yeah, I know it's, I don't know if it's not really on the agenda, is it the LAFCO? It's in here, but it's not agenda.
It's not on the
Okay.
agenda.
So I did attend the LAFCO meeting on the 12th of June. They have a new chair. His name is Chuck Lewis. He's an attorney, Adam Martinez. He's a public member. And they did approve their annual budget and with a 6.5% increase in salaries to the staff. That was.
Wow.
Okay. Great.
Fire
will-
chief updates.
We'll have finance report, Mary Smith.
Of finance.
Oh, it's me.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm prepared.
Okay. Yes.
So the strike team receivable outstanding is about $20,000, and this is unchanged from last month. The tunnel East Bay Hills fuel break expenses outstanding are $324,000, and 38% of the total budget has been spent through April 30. This concludes the treasurer. Oh, this shows the treasury bills. We have $28.8 million in treasury bills, and you can see the interest rates on the slide, and we keep buying them. And this concludes the finance update.
Can I just ask a quick question on these? So only 38% of it, I thought we were a lot further along than that.
On the field break?
Yeah.
No, sir, there were as Jeff will talk about here in a moment, with the weather and all those sort of things, we've been getting up to speed. We are now that we are into prime season and we've got all the pieces in place, we'll very quickly be moving into something close to $1 million a month in expenditures. And so this is typical of a project like this. There's the pre-work with the environmental review, in this case, Cal VTP, that is slow and it causes a lot of expenditures and results in 0 acres. And then there's getting the project moving and getting some of the harder portions completed. And then we did a bunch of pile burning, taking advantage of the weather and so forth. That is now set conditions for essentially full speed ahead, guns blazing. And have 2 expanded crews working full time. And so both acres and dollars will start to draw down very rapidly. The intent is by the time we hit seasonal rains, which can be anywhere from October to November. So we will plan for the earlier start. We'll then go into a maintenance mode, which will primarily consist of Confire Crew 12 that we used last year. We'll use grant funds to keep them in service where they otherwise would have been disbanded for the winter, which is a regional gain and shortens their stand up next year as they are able to keep more people on for the winter. We'll have them burning all of the piles that we're creating now, which reduces the amount of chipping, which increases the efficiency, decreases the cost. So we'll see a significant increase in outflows here over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and then a pretty dramatic drawdown as we get into the rainy season that will creep us across the line to March 2025 when the grant expires. The last dollar should go out the door in late February.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good evening, directors. Tonight I have a brief HR update. So first off, with the recruitment update, so for the office specialist supporting emergency preparedness, so I released this position. It was on May 23rd, the application period, May 23rd through June 10th. And this was based upon the preliminary approval of the fiscal year 25 budget. So now that the budget has been adopted, I will move forward and I will be screening the applicants and scheduling interviews.
Just a question on that.
Sure.
So you've already recruited
Mhm.
before the budget was
No,
approved?
didn't recruit, sir. Held the recruitment, so formed a list, but we haven't conducted interviews and we put out into the world that we may be hiring for this position, but we haven't committed to hiring anybody. We haven't completed the interviews. We haven't made a job offer. This was that takes some time. We wanted to make sure that application period was able to marinate long enough to attract quality applicants. So now that we have the board's approval, we will now move forward with conducting the interviews, forming a list, extending offers, et cetera.
Okay. I would just like to make one request on future positions that are open in the department, if you can notify the directors. I mean, I don't check our website all the time, and I'd like to just know when positions are open.
I can make that happen.
Okay.
Thank you. And then, next, the deputy fire chief, now that the budget, has been adopted, the deputy fire chief position will be prepared for release. And then in regards to the employment changes, for firefighter paramedic trainees, as you are aware, they, graduated on May 20th from the Fire Academy. And now they are reclassified as firefighter paramedics, and they will be progressing through their probationary process. So unless there's any questions, that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, fire marshal report.
Good evening, directors. Little different report for me tonight. I was gonna show the inspection map where our inspectors have been working in Orinda and kind of the progression they've taken over the last few weeks. Map, please, Marcia. So as the map's coming up, directors, the red are parcels that have failed, green or passed, yellow or pending inspections. Some of those in yellow have lock gates and staff is unable to make contact or to get on the property. They leave a card asking for a phone call, and then if we don't receive a phone call, we go back out and attempt to get on there, try to contact them, find a phone number for the resident to schedule an appointment. The green that you see throughout the district, those single parcels here and there, those are left over, those are our juniper parcels, the ones that are compliant with the juniper requirements. Can you scroll out just a little bit, Marcia? So you can see we started in North Orinda, directors. That's where the crew started, then they moved over to Orinda View. They moved over to the Monte Vista area and lower at El They are now hitting the areas south of Highway 24. Scroll down just a little bit.
So all the ones in red are ones that didn't pass, as you said?
That is correct. They have violations present, sir.
So didn't we covered a fair number of some of these last year, right? And so,
These are areas that we did not hit last year, so. They're butt up to those areas, so there's a portion of the map that you look at, and go, I thought we hit that last year, but no, we're just off from this. And then zoom out a little bit, please, Marcia, down towards Moraga. As you can see right there, the crews are working in the area, the yellow still are pending, the reds are the ones that have failed the inspection. And hold on, scroll back up, please.
Okay.
Little more. So what we have here, directors, is we split the crews up. You can see crews to the right where it's red. We have inspectors there. They're working towards the other team of inspectors are on the left side, moving towards them, utilizing our resources in a manner for efficiency that makes sense. And then scroll out and zoom down to
That yellow up there, that is the area you're gonna be doing.
yes, sir.
And I'm just trying to figure out, where is that?
Muth, Bates. In that area off of 24th.
so it looks like it's at St. Stephen's is the right hand bar, basically. Right?
Yes, sir. So we did Charles Hill, St. Stephen's and all that last year. And that's a pathway for fire to enter our community. So that's why we dropped down this year below 24 to kind of capture that area. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So thank you for doing it. So this is not meant to be negative because you guys are doing an amazing job with all this, but I just noticed right around my neighborhood, there are a lot of people that still have, I think we've done a great job of trimming trees up and bushes down and getting rid of a lot of brush and those kind of things, but the whole 2 foot out, 1 foot up thing, There are a lot of people that got inspected last year that still haven't really done that. Are we actually enforcing that or?
Yes, sir. I will make note and we'll have the team go back through there and make sure that we.
I know that's probably the hardest one to do, but I think.
Yes, sir.
It's the most controversial.
It is, it's one of the two things, one, to your original question, we're focusing the initial push, the first 30 days before the initial inspections come due for re-inspections in new areas that fill in the holes of the areas, the perimeter areas, fire entry points that we previously inspected. Depending on how much time is spent on re-inspections, that will free up inspection capacity sometime in July or August, we hope. At which point they will go, we won't open up new areas at that point. They will go back to areas that were previously inspected to encourage folks to sustain what they did before. To your second question though, or comment about the 2 foot by 1 foot. Yes, the hardest to get compliance with, particularly on things like mulch. People go to spread new mulch, it's very easy to push it back in. The other thing that's hard is with the vegetation from a distance. I have gone up truly irate in a number of places to demand to know why the 2 by 1 was not in place. And when I got the tape measure out, it was in place. And it was very hard to tell it from the street. So there may be some of that as well. And as I will address in item 10.2, 2 by 1 is better than nothing, but the science says 5 feet. And that is part of the problem as well, that 2 by 1, especially if people start pushing it and the 1 foot out turns into 9 inches and the 2 foot out turns into 18 inches, we start to get awfully close to the line and we are inspecting, but we also try to inspect to intent, not with a micrometer and things like that.
Just one more.
Yes, sir.
Question. So when we inspect the houses that are trading hands.
The property transfer one.
So sometimes we do that with pictures and whatever, and it's all wonderfully automated and that's great. Do we ever have an approval that we send to the wireless seller or we send the approval to? Is that one of our steps?
Yes, sir. They get a letter of compliance.
And can we include, I would recommend that we include in that something that says, because they know they're in compliance, but they might not, the new owner might not know why. And it seems to me that would be a great time to send along what the rules are, especially about mulch and plantings. There's a lot of people buy the house and don't know what the rules are because they're new to that, right? And so that just seems like a wonderful education time to me because almost every house I can think of, people as soon as they move in, change the landscape.
Sir, I was gonna bring up an example when we did. Chief held the class for the new inspectors and we took them around an area on the bluffs and walked through the houses and how we conduct our inspections. And I had one of our FACAs walking around with us. And he said, "Oh, this property just changed hands." And it had the 2 foot, 1 foot violation. And I pulled my staff aside and said, "Hey, how did we sign this off with this violation present?" And they said, "No, that violation wasn't present." So they raked everything back to pass the inspection. And then in the driveway is a whole new big pile of mulch that they're putting around the house. So we are inspecting that area this year and that house will obviously, get the pre-citation and be told, "Hey, this is what happened." But to your point, sir, I think that's a great opportunity to educate the new members coming in. And it just, Marcia, if you can just zoom out a little bit. And I just wanted to show the directors where we are gonna hit this year down in Moraga, Lost Valley, the Bluffs neighborhood. We had one area, we received numerous complaints and questions, so we went ahead and also are targeting that area for focused inspections as well.
Right. This looks like these aren't the drive-by 15-foot thing. These are real inspections, right?
Yes,
So this is a lot more than historically, especially a couple years ago, a lot more than we used to do of this kind of inspection.
Yes, sir. So there's 2 things there. So this will be the 3rd year of doing the more detailed inspections. Previously, we were focused on, which I think was appropriate with regard to our progression as a community, that we were very focused on the evacuation routes and on the volume of treatments that we needed to get the evacuation routes opened up. So the majority of our inspections were windshield. inspections. And that, I believe, 1 year peak, we had 4,300 inspections for the year. So our inspection staff has increased with Assemblyman Bayer Kahan's funding. We got us 2 extra positions, and we've gotten better at doing so. We're far more efficient now. But our numbers are down about half. We'll likely to hit 1,500 to 2,000 inspections this year, give or take. Because they are much more detailed, and as Jeff alluded to, some of the parcels that are in yellow, just getting in, finding the resident, making access, it's better than it was pre-pandemic, but that can be laborious in and of itself. And obviously, the quantity of work that is required per parcel is much higher. So I'm confident and the inspections are much more targeted now to the points of entry where we believe fast-moving wind-driven fire will enter the community from either the surrounding watershed and parklands to our north or from Lafayette, specifically in the St. Stephen's area and at the end of Glorietta, as well as the Campolindo neighborhood coming out of the reservoir in Lafayette. But those are the areas where we're concerned about fire entering the community. Now, everyone should be creating defensible space and home hardening because of the issue with ember wash. But if we can address the ground component of fire through these detailed inspections at those points and the neighborhoods that we've previously inspected sustain the work, we will rapidly move to a space where we have a lot less risk. And then we can consider what the next phase is, probably 2 or 3 years from now, as far as how we expand the inspection program beyond the points of entry.
Are we at all able to work with like the city council in Lafayette? Because I realize it's not, it's not complex, but they can at least then lobby Confire or their residents to actually do some of the great, even though they don't have a great code yet. I get that, but at least I think there is more, the more firewise communities, a lot of things happening in Lafayette because the people are more aware of it now. But if we can have them work on those same focus areas, that would help.
I agree, sir. I would suggest that's a political discussion, and perhaps a letter from the board to the city council, or a joint letter, which we will address under item 10.2, a joint letter from the town council, the city council, and the fire board to Lafayette. It's Moraga-Orinda for a reason, and our fire risk is very much intertwined as a result of a northeast wind bringing fire into the community.
Thank you. I think that's it. Think about that.
Yes, sir.
The letter.
Very much.
Good idea. And maybe some extra education. You do a huge amount of education here, but maybe offering to give a presentation to the Lafayette City Council or something to help you. I know that's a lot. It's a burden, but
It's in someone else's district, so
if they're
that's
willing. Okay, that'd be hard. Okay.
have to be invited.
Okay. We could work on that.
And then, directors, we've turned back on our district sponsored chipping program. We normally turn it on at the end of the season, so we had to make some changes to our website. Took us a little bit to get it right, to get the months off and everything, and get the language correct. And that was on me getting looking at it with staff and making sure we were putting what needed to be on there. We also made some updates to the form. One of the things that we encounter a lot of times is people sign up and their piles aren't ready. So one of the questions we ask is, hey, is your pile ready to go? Because it's going to be short turnaround. You sign up, we're going to attempt to get crews out very quickly. The other issue we're going to have to do is deconflict with Moraga-Orinda chipper, because people, hey, I'm gonna sign up for both, and one of them will be here. So I'm working with the Orinda city staff and my staff to figure out how we do that deconflicting, so we don't have 2 chippers showing up in the same address.
Yeah, and they're not to complain about yours, but their program for signing up is incredibly, it costs money.
Yes.
I get that, but theirs is incredibly easy to use. And I've heard that from a lot of people that use it.
It's very selective. It's also very expensive.
So it's
And paid by resident, so we'd be paying twice. So we're as Jeff's working with them to figure out whether or not we can slipstream in some way that we reflect that it's the same number of humans in the community, and they shouldn't be double counted. But we'll get smart on how it's working for them and contact Fireside and see what options are for us to use Chipper Day, which obviously would reduce the double signs.
Great.
And then also, our vent mesh, and I believe it's because of that flyer we sent out, 4-page flyer with the QR codes. We've seen a uptick in our request for vent fire, the bushfire mesh, the ember resistant vents. We placed another order. We were starting to receive a request for large sizes. Our typical size was 7.5 inch by either 50 feet or 100 feet, and then we would cut it to size. We saw requests for 4 to 6 feet in width, to cover decks and other areas of homes. So we had, one Firewise neighborhood actually went to the company, was, looking to place an order. They called me, we worked with them. We placed the order. We had a portion of it drop shipped to the homes, the larger, 60 by 50 foot rolls. We have the smaller rolls that we're gonna take out to them. They are going to cut it and get back to us. The number of homes that were serviced with all the vent mesh and their location. And then we've also taken delivery of the 60 by 50 rolls, 49 by 50 rolls, and we still have a whole bunch of the 7.5 by 50. But we're also have seen a large request for the circular vents, the 2 and 3 inch. So I'm working with bushfire mesh or wildfire defense mesh now to get another order placed for these. So
And they come right like that, you don't have to cut them.
correct. And it's my staff loves not having to cut these.
Manufacturer, that's a good idea.
Yes, sir. I think it was somewhere in Monterey County that ordered a whole bunch of these, so. Yes, good. Directors, that's all I have for my report. Happy to answer any questions.
What's going on with categories? Oh, good.
I will turn that over to.
Hey, just before you go, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
A general question. So, people who have, the front of their house near the road, they have a place where you can pull a car in there, right in front of the house. And I've noticed that in some places, people put logs, so people can't park there, things like that. Is that?
It is combustible material, sir, and our ordinance requires 3 feet back from the roadway. So yes, if there's a house that has logs or.
You know what I'm
something like
talking
that,
about, right?
yes, sir. We'll go take a peek at it.
That's prohibited.
Yes, sir.
Well, you can do it, but not within 3 feet of the road.
It's not within 3 feet, and then now we start looking also at the fuel break standard. If that, where does their property line come up? Is there a requirement for a fuel break if the parcel is greater than an acre in size? If it's under an acre, it requires complete abatement, and
Those that can't.
yes.
I think sometimes it's done, and I don't even know that parking spot is the homeowner's property.
Also, some of this is very much a municipal code issue.
Okay.
Because our regulation of the roadway is exclusive to fire apparatus access for the roadway. Which is, there's nothing to prevent you from doing that, and vegetation management, which has to do with wildfire, logs on the side of the road, particularly logs surrounded by gravel. It's a bit of a stretch to really hang your hat. It's technically a violation, but it's a bit of a stretch, and we take a very loose view of the 3 foot back. Mostly because there's a lot of areas where that's all that there's room for, and slopes falling off, those sort of things. So there is an element to this that is probably a traffic safety issue from the city or that mission.
Yeah, I noticed today, just driving down Glorietta.
Mhm.
At the end of Glorietta, right before you go down the hill. Past Robert Road, I think it is, there's a bunch of logs, stumps and logs, right there. I don't know if that's East Bay Mud property or someone's property, I don't
It
know.
might be the church, but
I just don't know.
we'll certainly talk to Public Works as well, but there's likely to be a component associated with the municipal code.
Directors, the Tunnel East Bay Hills Fuel Break Project, like Chief said, we're getting ready to really kick it into high gear. We have one crew that's currently out there working, anywhere from 10 to 12 members. That crew is going to bump up to 20 members. We're bringing in a second crew, after the July 4th holiday. We are in the area that we knew was going to take a lot of time, was going to take a lot of money. That's why we tried to get the other areas, first treatments in there. So we could really focus on this area. And as Chief said, you're gonna see the outflow, really see an increase in acres and an increase in the amount of money we're spending, grant dollars we're spending. I hope to have some pictures next month for you for this report to show areas pre and post treatment.
I noticed on your report, the state mandated inspections, all the schools failed,
Yes, sir.
and that just goes into the state.
Yes, sir. We're required to report that to the Office of the State Fire Marshal. And then also in the Health and Safety Code, it requires the
So
elected board.
what reaction did you get from them, or what?
A lot of the initial inspections, multiple pages of violations. By the second inspection, it was down to a few. Where they're at right now, the compliance measures cost money. They're going through their budget process to rectify that. Some of it is stuff they never knew, so education for us to tell them. An example is the fire extinguisher. Every year, also on the back of that car is the monthly signature. They didn't know about it, and we educated them that, hey, you have to do this, and we didn't know about it until we went through the training with the state fire marshal's office and walked through inspections with them. That's not something you find right in the middle of the code and glaring at you. You have to dig for that. I mean, it's actually in California Code of Regulations, Title 19. So that was education to us, education to the school. It seems like a simple fix for us in the classroom. You have custodial staff, you have teachers. Why can't somebody just sign? We don't direct the school staff, but we do advise them that this is a violation. They will get cited for it.
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions on that, but we have item 9.5 later on, so. I'll wait for that.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. A quick update on the home hardening grant program, but first, a quick update on our fire adapted community ambassadors. In May, we had 98 requests for our ambassadors to come out and do assessments on folks. In June so far, we've had, well, at 5 o'clock, we had 29, and since then I've seen emails that we've had 3 additional. So far this year, we've had requests for 170 folks to come out. I'm glad Mark Evans is here. We developed a program where we have kind of zone captains. So Mark is our North Orinda zone captain. Steve White is handling Moraga, Bollinger Canyon, and the community of Canyon, and Todd Stern is handling South Orinda. And so far, it seems like that program having individuals that can reach out, we've been able to spread out the requests to more fire adapted community ambassadors. So we're keeping more people involved and getting a lot more done.
I would say it's working really well, that this new program with the people for the district.
Yeah, there's more contact. And
Yeah.
we're gonna have what we're calling the fire adapted community ambassador huddle, I think on the 26th via Zoom. So we'll get everybody together on a Zoom meeting and kind of make sure we're all doing the same things.
So are most of the requests for these people to come out from people that just got a ticket or just got a citation or a pre-citation?
Pre-citations. I think it's a smattering. I think there's a lot of people, we had a lot of interest in May. We had 98 requests in May. And that coincided, we think, with the fire marshal, the fire prevention sending out the, hey, fire season is coming, you know, we're going to be inspecting. That was a big bubble in our thing. Most of the people, my impression is most of the people that are requesting inspections want to know what to do. Not necessarily that they've got a citation yet. So they're trying to avoid that.
Inspections, that's great.
Yeah. And then as far as the home hardening grants program, on Monday, I got a letter from Gutter Glove, our Moraga-Orinda, our vendor for that. They have worked up to their management team and they've agreed to do the ship direct to the resident. So when we make a grant award, we will send them every 2 weeks a list of these people requested this amount of material and they will ship directly to them, which is going to be a huge relief for the work for both our volunteers that we're helping at our points of distribution and district staff with packaging stuff and keeping it going. They also agreed to include some information that MOFD puts together, so we'll include our home hardening grants and our fire adapted community, the pamphlet, that 4-page pamphlet, so they'll get that and they'll get more information. And then in order to get the shipping costs down, we changed to a slightly different product. The quality is still the same, but we're going from what they call their Elite Blaster Pro product to Home Safe, which is it's the same density of mesh. It's just got a little different pattern on it. It's a little easier for them to produce. So I mean, it's actually working out where it's $15 per 100 feet to ship it, and they're eating half of that. So it's working out to be pretty well. And then
Where are those made?
the companies and actually their distribution centers out of Roseville, California. So relatively close for us, but they're a national company. And I believe if there's no questions, that's the end of my report.
Well, that's great progress. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think a lot of people will be happy not having to wait in line or get their weekend. So it's both parties. You know,
Exactly.
We don't have to stop and they don't have to wait.
Probably all.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, directors. Lucas Simon. I'll be giving tonight's operational update, seeing significant events since the last time. Beginning with some updates that Dennis and Fire Marshal Isaacs just mentioned. Want to recognize the efforts by our communities of the hard work of exterior wildfire hazard abatement requirements that began enforcement as of June 1st. However, as we said, plenty of work has to be done. This picture is always a litmus test for me as I enter into Moraga on Moraga Road. And you can see the difference, of course. Next slide. On June 16th at approximately 02:30 hours, crews responded to a vehicle fire extending to a structure in the Orinda View neighborhood. Upon arrival, crews encountered a large home with a complex design with fire that was well established in the walls and attic upon arrival. Crews were able to initially contain the fire to the area of origin. However, later that day, partial structure collapse revealed additional fire in void spaces. Crews extinguished the fire with extensive overhaul and remained on scene on a fire watch through the night. The cause of the fire appears to be a parked car adjacent to the structure. No injuries were reported on scene. Hydrants in this area are known to have low pressure, and a relay pumping operation was used to support the fire attack engine, and there was significant or sufficient water to supply the fire attack. The picture on the lower right here gives an example of an aerial shot of the size and the complexity of the structure our firefighters entered when they arrived on scene.
Just one point on the picture on the lower left from the drone, you'll note in the very bottom portion of the home and then up to the top left, there's solar panels that were covered with plastic in an attempt to de-energize them by the crews to decrease the risk they were running as they were removing all of the roofing material from around the solar panels to get to hidden void space fire. Very concerning that the solar panels are still producing electricity. So made an attempt to cover them up to de-energize them to reduce the risk to the crews that are operating. It also on the back, going down the basketball court, it's 3 stories on a down sloping structure. So there were a lot of moving parts on a fire weakened roof for the work they did. As Lucas alluded to in passing, extensive overhaul meant stripping down. This picture was taken early in the morning. By late afternoon, all of that roofing material had been stripped down to bare rafters in order to expose any hidden pockets of fire.
Was that an electric car?
No. Much more.
And so this fire rekindled with flames? I mean, it was.
Yes, sir. So the fire got into the attic. It was primarily an attic fire. It started on the left side in the garage, and then it extended via the eaves on the right side and that top left picture, right side underneath that dormer window, and gained access to what was a really compartmented main attic space. On the top left, you see the chimney standing there. Late morning, 11:30, 12 o'clock or so, that chimney collapsed. And in collapsing, it opened up an entirely new section and perhaps blew some either embers or air into a new space. And that caused a rekindle in the attic spaces to the right of that dormer, in areas that had previously gotten some fire. And there was smoke and then the flames. The resident observed those, we sent a full alarm. And then that triggered the even more extensive overhaul than it already accomplished. The call came in at 2:30. The morning crews cleared close to 9 that morning, and then the afternoon crews were there through the day, and then we left fire watch through the night, keeping an eye on it. It was flown late morning for hotspots and then appeared as well. A very complex roof with a lot of heating compartments. Here. Yes, sir.
Yes, and the large picture on the right, as Chief had mentioned as well, the hillside structures on top of a very complex home or structure are of great danger to us as firefighters because of the flow patterns that fire exists. So and as you are well aware, throughout our communities, we have many of these types of structures. Although we train on them regularly, each one is different in its own way. Next slide. On Tuesday, June 4th at approximately 09:54 hours, crews responded to a mutual aid assistance call with Oakland Fire Department to the report of a vehicle fire inside the Caldecott Tunnel board number 2. Upon arrival, crews experienced thick, dark, black smoke from the vehicle fire. MOFD and OFD were able to work together to extinguish the fire and evacuate the smoke that was confined inside of the tunnel. No injuries were reported on scene. It was estimated that there were approximately 75 people inside of the tunnel at the time of the incident. This fire, any fire in a confined area is of great danger. And fortunately, we have a great working relationship with Oakland Fire, have been able to make coordinated attacks and in collaboration with, of course, CHP and Caldecott that helps with the ventilation fans that you see working there to extricate the smoke and blow it to the exterior of the tunnel. Yes, sir.
So what do you recommend if you were one of the 75 people that was stuck in there when the fire happened and it's in front of you? Do you recommend people stay in the car, get out, run backward? What do you do?
Certainly situational dependent. But in this case, our advice to resident or to the occupants of the vehicles was to stay in the cars and to allow us to extinguish the fire and evacuate the smoke to clear. There's all kinds of different things. People panic and run. People will stay in their vehicles. Some people try to drive, which is not advisable because number one, there's typically no space to drive. Second, you can't see where you're driving, which is also difficult and dangerous for us as we enter either through regular flow of traffic or contraflow through the opposite side, going against the flow. So it is, as you can imagine, certainly a coordinated attack and coordination of events that needs to happen to slow and stop the flow of traffic on the roadways, but also to make access and deliver the care to the people inside the vehicles.
Did they close down all the boards when that happened?
When this happened, we closed 1, 2, and 3. Board 4 was open at the time. As you can as you can imagine, so boards 1 and 2 are going eastbound. Eastbound Highway 24, but you can make access into board 2 from board 3. So there's crossheads that connect them, and that was the purpose for closing board 3, which goes westbound. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah. All right. Earlier this month, we received our Type 6 engine. It's a 2023 Dodge Ram 5500. To us as firefighters, it's known as a Type 6 engine. It will carry 300 gallons of water and be equipped with hose, tools, and equipment suitable for wildland firefighting. However, this unit is smaller than the typical Type 1 fire engine. So it will be able to access some of the tight areas and narrow access and egress through our communities. It will be stationed at Station 43 in Orinda. And is finalizing the last pieces before it goes into service, which we are hopes to get it in service by the end of the month. But as you can see, we do need to finish up with a couple of upfitting with our label and our brand, and then some of the tools that equip this engine.
You have to send that out to get all that done, or they come here to do it? Or-
Yes, sir. We have a contract with Alameda County Fire, their equipment, fleet service, and so they're finishing up the work for us.
Can we get to see that one too?
Yes, sir. It'll be there at the next board meeting. We'll make sure we bring it up. But also note it's not purple. And it doesn't have dents running down the door. That's just the trees in the back.
Thanks for the clarification. I couldn't tell if it was just me or not. Next slide. As Christine had mentioned, on May 20th at 6 p.m., MOFD graduated 4 firefighter paramedic recruits from the Joint Academy with Contra Costa County Fire. The new recruits have joined our ranks and become probationary firefighter paramedics. Congratulations to firefighter paramedic Kyle Bird and Eddie Epperson, who joined me on A shift, Chris O'Leary on B shift, and Sean Fox on C shift. We are certainly excited to have them join our team, and for the next 18 months they'll be in our probationary phase that is encompassed with all kinds of learning opportunities. Next slide. And many firsts, as you see here. So this was a picture. The two pictures on the left are one of the first fires that one of the recruits went to on the freeway. It's a vehicle fire. And then the picture on the right is the first probationary test to locate equipment on the engines under the watchful eyes of our firefighters that are asking where the tools are at, making sure they get to it in a timely manner. Next slide. This concludes my operations report. There's 3 additional items that I'd like to just note for completion of our annual hydrants maintenance. We have 100% completion across the district. In addition, our fire trail grading was completed just last week. We have conducted a evacuation drill in collaboration with the City of Lafayette PD, Contra Costa County Sheriff's, Contra Costa County Fire, and MOFD in the Hunsacred Canyon area. And then last, we currently have 1 member out on the arrow incident in Calaveras, Tuolumne counties. I'm a strike team leader training. This concludes my operations report. Any questions?
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And then the next item, there's a list of our upcoming calendar and events. And starting in July, we will be meeting in the Orinda Library Auditorium. And we will be able to meet there for the remainder of the year.
Excellent.
Yes,
Great. Good thing.
it is. And then the other event that is not listed on the calendar is tomorrow. Chief Winiger will be meeting in the Orinda View neighborhood to discuss the recent fire. So there will be a neighborhood meeting in the Orinda View neighborhood tomorrow.
Thank you.
And we can,
Public comment on the announcements that you've made.
so public comment is open and we do not have any hands raised. And we've not received any written public comment.
So any comments on items that are not on the agenda?
And we have received 2 written public comments for items not on the agenda. One was from Steve Cohn. His written comment covered 2 items. And the other one was from Jane Johnson. In her public comment, she did not identify what item she was referring to, so I've placed it under items not on the agenda. Both comments have been forwarded to the directors and are available on our website. We do not have any hands raised. And we do not have any in-person public comment.
So the consent agenda. But does anybody want to change it within the consent agenda, or do I hear I guess we have to have the comment on the consent agenda after the board. So there isn't the comments. The evening minutes from the board.
This one. One second, I think I have one. So for item 9.7. Don't, I mean, if we. I'd like to pull that one, let's just.
Okay. Do we have any other board comments or anything they want to pull? Do we have any public comment on items on the consent agenda?
So public comment is open for the consent agenda, and we do not have any hands raised.
Okay.
Do we want to approve items 9.1 through 9.6?
I'll make a motion to accept, approve item 9.1 to 9.6.
I second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Director Danziger?
Aye.
Director Hassler?
Aye.
Director Jex?
Aye.
And Director Jorgens?
Aye.
Item 9.7.
Good evening, directors. As outlined in the staff report, the district conducts elections every 2 years to fill seats. There are specifically 2 items that the board needs to make a determination on. One is the number of words that will be allowed in the candidate statements. There's a fee associated with that, as outlined in the staff report, at either $253 or $262 for districts 2 and 5 that will be up for election for 250 words, or $506 or $524 for 400 words. For the two district election districts. There is also a cost to conduct an election, which is included in the budget that was previously approved. And then lastly, the county elections office requires the board make a decision regarding what action would be taken in the event of a tie vote. The 2 available options are that the winner shall be determined by a lot at the time and place designated by the board, or the governing board shall call a runoff election on the 6th Tuesday following the election at which the vote occurred. Of note that were we to hold a standalone runoff election, the cost would be between $9 and $12 per registered voter. The attached ordinance or resolution 2407 calling for the election includes the staff's recommendation for a 400-word candidate statement and the results of a tie vote being resolved by lot, which is consistent with the last 3 elections and the associated resolution. So should the board desire to do something else, this would be the time to do so. However, we carried forward what the board's previous recommendation or direction was.
Yeah, I pulled this because I just thought there was a few, we should have a little bit of discussion. I have no problem with, I really don't have any problem with anything here, but I wanted to bring up one matter. This report refers to Division 2 and Division 5, and just for the sake of the notes, I just thought we should just explain a little what the District 2 and District 5 is. You know, just kind of give an overview of where those are, because people, the public won't know probably. And so I just want to get kind of an explanation of, you know, that District 2 is Moraga, District 5 is Orinda, and just a general explanation of where they are. You know,
So I think that also.
if the directors want to do it,
I'm just 55 and it's.
Yeah.
But for a part of the Elton Mount area and around the woods. Roughly speaking,
Yeah.
it's the rest of Linda north of Highway 24.
District 2 is north part of Moraga. What's to describe it? Campbell Window area.
Yes, sir. North of Moraga, exclusive of well, until it bumps into District 3 and District 4. We have the maps from the previous election district or of notes, or as mentioned, the residents don't need to do anything. It will appear on their ballot if they're in the
Yeah,
district
just
that
people
is up for
even-
election.
People who may look at our notes, they wouldn't know where those are. I know they appear on the
Yes, sir.
ballot.
We can attach the
Maps are also
On our
on the
website.
website.
on the website. We can attach those to the minutes as
That'd be
well,
great.
reflecting.
And I just want to clarify one thing, because I just couldn't remember and I didn't have to take the time. I know we did some redistricting. The area by School Street, is that District 2 now, or is that District 1? I just can't remember.
Do you want this whole thing?
Uh,
Two.
I think this is one.
Is it one?
I
It
think,
came across Moraga Road.
yeah, there's. There was a little bit added to just.
Oh, keep going.
And.
What is the School Street area? Is it
Right.
one or two?
The final changes, School Street was added to 3, correct? Is it going?
No, we moved from three.
Removed from 3 and added to 2.
The two.
Yes, sir, to balance the changes in
Right, I
population.
just couldn't remember if it went to 1 or 2, so, okay. But that's really all I really had, everything else to me is.
And on our website, under Board of Directors, at the bottom, it lists each district and it shows each map for each district. And so it's very,
Also, the one that showed all the streets.
so it's at the bottom of our, on Board of Directors.
So do we have any further comments from the board about 9.7? And then do we have any comments from the public about 9.7?
And so we do not have any public comment on item 9.7.
I moved in, we had moved in 3.7.
I'll second that.
Director Danziger,
Aye.
Director Hassler,
Aye.
Director Jex,
Aye.
Director Jorgens.
Motion.
Meeting directors, as discussed last month, obviously insurance has become, insurance disruptions in insurance caused by wildfire losses have become a significant issue for our community. With parts of, with Orinda specifically experiencing 22.7% of the community being non-renewed by State Farm in a single day. There is the possibility that other major carriers will similarly withdraw from parts of the market, which will hasten the ongoing crisis. Anecdotally, we've heard from a number of residents that they are unable to find coverage in the admitted market, because quite simply no one is writing the policies, and that their attempts to seek coverage through the FAIR plan have been challenging, mostly with the FAIR plan is significantly exceeding its capacity. It was intended, it's literally called the insurance of last resort, and it is simply not staffed for the massive inflows of residents seeking coverage. As a result of that, residents are either going without coverage or seeking coverage in the non-admitted market, or the excess and surplus lines specifically, which is challenging and unregulated. Of note on the insurance front, since the publication of the staff report last week, Commissioner Lara and the California Department of Insurance have published their sustainable wildfire strategy, which is going to, in exchange for use of cap models and the ability to pass along the cost of reinsurance, the admitted carriers will commit to writing up to 85% or at least 85% of the policies in fire distressed areas, which on face value sounds like very good news and perhaps something that would significantly resolve our insurance problem. Unfortunately, the specific language that's used in the text and the maps that were associated with it exclude Moraga and Orinda for 2 reasons. The first is that there is a designation of undermarketed zip codes, which are zip codes in which there are under a significant number of people in that district meet some parameters that we'll get into in a second. However, critically, the zip code must partially overlap a high or very high fire hazard severity zone as shown on a map published by CAL FIRE. That penalizes LRA area, local responsibility areas in Moraga and Orinda, because there is no high fire hazard severity zones under the existing maps. And the SRA maps that were published in April and are now finalized include moderate, high, and very high, and are updated circa 2024. The LRA maps only include very high and were published in 2009. Currently, obviously, a lot of things have changed since 2009. So being an LRA comes with a penalty right out of the gate. The second thing is that at least 15% of residential properties that are insured under either the voluntary market or the FAIR plan are insured by the FAIR plan. Given the recent change in our insurance experience, it is likely that 6 weeks or 6 months from now, we will have many, many more people in the FAIR plan than we do today. So the regulation is being proposed at a moment that we're not seeing the full value of the full impact of the recent insurance changes reflected in the FAIR plan. And so we're being penalized a second time because of the recency of our change in insurance coverage. And then lastly, the zip code must also, these are ORs, that must also have the average premium for $1,000 with coverage A is at least $4 for the coverage of 1,000, while the per capita income of the zip code is no higher than the 50th percentile of California. So we will fall off the list there as well. And then lastly, that the insurance commissioner shall publish a list of distressed counties based on a determination of classified as high or very high risk as determined by the commissioner. We don't know what criteria that is. The maps that have been published exclude Alameda County and Contra Costa County as distressed counties and only include Canyon zip code because it is SRA. So it's falling into a different category. So this new proposal in its current form, current implementation, does nothing for Moraga and Orinda, and therefore for the preponderance of the district's residents. As I outlined in the staff report, as we have seen the increase in non-renewals, we've been getting a corresponding increase in phone calls from residents asking if they can be inspected and can they get a certificate of compliance from the fire district stating that they have met our standards, which we are happy to provide. And what they're finding when they send those to their broker or to their agent, they're finding that MOFD ordinance 2303 with its 2-foot non-combustible, 2x1 non-combustible, is not enough to satisfy the insurance industry's requirements because the science says that a full zone 0 at 5 feet non-combustible is what's required to protect the home, as recognized in the California Department of Insurance Safer from Wildfire Framework and the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home. As outlined in the staff report, the fire district has the authority under Government Code 51175 or Public Resource Code 4117 in SRA to establish more restrictive measures supported by a finding of fact. However, previous conversations and attempts we've had to impose more restrictive measures have met here and in other places, have met significant community pushback. And specifically, the city council and the town council have expressed concern that they were not appropriately included in the conversation, as happened most recently with the updates to 2304 that became 2308 for our perimeter fuel break requirement. The city sent us 2 letters that are included, essentially encouraging more cooperation, which on something this weighty, I think is very appropriate. So what I'm seeking board direction for is direction to call for a tri-agency meeting, the town council, the city council, and the fire board to meet in their full bodies, not in a 2x2 setting, to discuss whether or not the authority that we have to establish and enforce a zone 0, whether the time is right. This would be a significant change to the landscaping ideal that has characterized our semi-rural community. However, anything short of that is going to fall below the level of actuarial significance that the insurance industry recognizes. So from my perspective, to follow the science, it's very simple. However, obviously, our experience over the last several years with updating our exterior hazard abatement ordinances suggests it is not that simple. However, I have heard a lot of people say there's nothing to be done. This is an insurance crisis. There's absolutely something that could be done. The question is whether or not as a community we're ready to do that. And I believe that would be best weighed in upon by the community via its elected representatives from all 3 bodies. I would be happy to take any questions that the board may have, and am looking for board direction with regard to moving forward to attempting to schedule a tri-agency meeting.
I think it's a great idea. I think it is, you know, 2x1 is relatively doable without doing major, butchery to your shrubs and things. It still kind of look like it's, like you said, from the street, you can't kind of tell. 5 feet, you will tell.
Yes, sir.
And I think it's going to take, guess that all those elected officials would like to take the pulse of the people and if the people are screaming because they can't get insurance or the insurance costs way too much or whatever. I think there'll be a more receptive, audience for that. And we can of course quote, yeah, there are a number of people. Talk to what's the name of the company that does these inspections for the IDH?
Madronas
Yeah,
and Louis.
they were the fire that we had a couple weeks ago. Which was great, and a lot of people here were there about it. So, but they said that there are a number of people that are actually asking to voluntarily, forget about fire code, do that because their insurance company, well, they give them at least some discount, but I think they're not as great with the discount as they are about the just plain getting insurance. So I think there is a more receptive audience, and I've gotten just this week two different people email saying, what can we do to make the insurance companies happier? And it was one of the things we can do. But I think it's a great idea to have a joint meeting. So I will make room on my calendar, kind of whenever it is.
I would agree with everything that Director Jordan said, that it could be hard pressed to do it throughout the whole district, but it's worth talking about. I agree with many reasons.
Standing, unless Director Hassler has anything to add, I have what I need, up to public comments.
Thank you. Okay.
We can open
Okay,
public comment.
on that presentation.
So public comment is open. And we do not have any hands raised.
Okay.
Mhm.
So adopt resolution 24-05, establishing fiscal year 24-25 fire flow tax rates for the Orinda and Moraga services.
Each year, the district is required to set the fire flow tax rate in each of the district's 2 service zones. For the current fiscal year, the fire flow tax was set at 6 cents in both the Moraga and Orinda service zones. The fire flow tax generated $1.1 million of tax revenue to the district. Staff recommends the board adopt resolution 24-05, adopting the fiscal year 2025 fire flow tax rate of 6 cents in both the Moraga and Orinda service zones. This concludes the staff report.
Any board questions?
I just want to acknowledge that I think all of us received numerous emails from people regarding this. Some had details in it, some didn't have very much in it. I do want to acknowledge a set of emails that we've received in previous years as well from a resident named Steve Cohn. And I read through what he gave us. He sets forth in one of these emails, he calls it excuses that we've made for why we won't raise the fire flow tax in Moraga, but I think those are actually reasons, and I don't think they're excuses, they're actually reasons, and I think they make a lot of sense. And I'm in favor of keeping the fire flow tax at 6%, 6 cents in each area. Moraga
And the thing that Steve continues, even though I've got lots of discussions with him about it, keeps leaving out the fact that back in Proposition 13, when the state looked back 2 years from when it was passed and said, here's what, here's how you're spending so much on schools and so much on the fire district and blah, blah, then the whole thing. And that's what they froze the rates at. That's where the proportion that everybody gets. And during that time, Orinda, has a different rate. For example, Moraga, sure, we're putting in more of the fire district. Moraga puts more into county and the jails and the sheriffs and all those kind of fun things than Orinda does. So, it isn't, it was a historical thing. Nobody's asking us to pay more for the fire, for the sheriffs and the county jails and all those kind of fun things. So it is what it is. And the other thing that he points out is that, yes, I've seen some of the brochures that were sent out and the things saying here's what the formation of MOFD is going to do. But the actual founding documents are not necessarily consistent with what those things said. And the politicians that signed up for MOFD and signed all the founding documents at the time are the ones we even need to look back to, because the actual founding documents support having a single district that doesn't have, doesn't have preferences about who goes where or where people are staffed or anything else. We treat it as one district, and that's the way the founding documents whether or not that's how they were advertised, were voted on. So I also support that we have state work.
I agree.
Advantage, two items, maybe just briefly, gentlemen, one thing which I do think is worth restating, that the fire district has two service zones. Which date back to its founding. The zones are based on the Orinda Fire Protection District and Moraga Fire Protection District. There are a significant number of Orinda homes that are in the Moraga Service District. In the service zone, so the fire flow tax is assigned not based on the city limits, but on the service zones, is thing one. Thing two, there are, per the Board of Equalization, there are 23 distinct tax districts within the fire district, each of which has its outflows apportioned slightly differently. So to your point, sir, not only are Moraga and Orinda different, there are many shades of gray in between, and each home was assessed the same total amount of tax, obviously. And relative to underneath the same formula, and then it is apportioned differently in 23 distinct ways within the fire district.
So and also it's almost equal, right, it's the same amount, total is.
Yeah, so each house is the same tax assessment is placed on each house, and it's just distributed, it's same rate, yes, sir, the dollars are different, but the rate, the formula is the same, and then it's apportioned different.
So do you have any other comments from the board?
No.
Any comments from the public?
So the public comment period is open, and then we did receive our written public comment from Steve Cohen. We do not have any hands raised or any more public comment.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I know we approve of the article tax as stated.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Director Danziger,
Aye.
Director Hassler,
Aye.
Director Jex,
Aye.
Director Jorgens.
Okay, adopt the resolution 24-06 establishing the district's annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 24-25.
The district is required to annually adopt an appropriations limit. The appropriations limit has been calculated to be $39,089,573. Staff recommends the board adopt resolution 24-06, establishing the district's annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 24-25. This concludes the report.
And that includes the social quality, the grant for program.
Yes.
Any board discussion?
And this is, there's no discretion here. It's a formula and that's what it is, right?
Correct.
It's the total amount of it. And all of it. It's our resolution.
There's a small difference between what's in the budget. Is expenditures, it's very close. I don't, is it?
Right, that's part of the work that I do. So some of the expenses are not counted against the appropriations limit. So for instance, things like debt service and capital outlay. So we do have a pretty significant gap between our expenditures and the limit.
Intentional, okay, thank you.
Any other board discussion? Any public discussion?
And so but the public comments open. And we do not have any hands raised for public comment.
Or motion?
I move we approve the resolution 20.
I'll second that.
Director Danziger.
Aye.
Director Hassler,
Aye.
Director Jex,
Aye.
Director Jorgens.
So moved. So approved. Okay, committee reports. The standing audit committee.
And there hasn't been any meetings since our last meeting.
Okay.
We can take public comment on this item. And we do not have any public
Is
comment.
there a ad hoc committee which the city of Orinda scheduled yet? And,
Next.
August.
Read on the next date. Yeah, I think we agreed it was gonna be in like August, but I don't think we agreed on the date yet.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
August 22nd, 2024 at 6
Oh,
in the Sarge.
okay.
Future agenda
We
items.
did have a meeting, most of which was talking about, the 5-foot zone and the projects we made and the inspections and kind of a lot of what Chief's report was I, we talked about at that meeting, there was some. I don't know if pushback necessarily from the individuals there, but I think there was a. There was apprehension about a 5-foot rule because of all the reasons we all know about it. It's gonna be a controversy.
I get it.
So I think that's gonna be a really good reason to have them have a good education during the, much like there was the Moraga meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago. Where the chief went through, kind of a whole presentation about both the insurance and the fire risks and what's going on and why the 5-foot made sense. I think having that same kind of a presentation during, hopefully we have a private group during meeting, I think that would be very helpful, and hopefully we can convince more people that it's a good idea. That was an informal ad hoc presentation, sorry.
Future agenda items?
Any board comments about future items?
I don't know if it needs to be a separate agenda item, but Chief, maybe in your next report, maybe we can hear a little about this families of coverage.
Sure. Good idea. Anybody else on the board? Any public comments? I guess we don't have.
We do take public comment on future agenda items. And we do not have any public comment.
Okay.
Okay,
That means we're actually gonna be done at 9:19. Somebody
Yes.
just write that down. You're
I can't maybe.
pretty close to our record. We wouldn't look at the ambulance, I think we would have been like.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to just,
Oh, sorry.
for the motion for adjourning, I'd just like to mention a couple of things real quick. One is, today is actually Juneteenth. And I just want to acknowledge Juneteenth is commemorates June 19th, 1865, when freedom finally came for 250,000 enslaved people of Texas. And I have the proclamation. I'm going to give that to you. This is from President Biden. And so I'm going to just give it to you, Marcia.
Okay.
And then I'd also like to just acknowledge that June has internationally been acknowledged as Pride Month. And that's all I need to say about that.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'm going to adjourn. I'll second that.
Director Danziger?
Aye.
Director Hassler?
Aye.
Director Jex? Director Jorgens? And the time is 9:20.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Nice going.
Quick.